Hi, I'm Erica Farber, President and CEO of the RAB. Welcome to Radio on Main Street, the podcast all about radio. Now, our current podcast series focuses on one of radio's greatest and most special assets, our on-air talent. As we like to say, radio was the original social medium, and its on-air personalities are the original social media influencers. With many of these social influencers having greater reach and followers than that of other media, what really makes them special is they have incredibly strong ties to local community that's based on a foundation of trust and emotional connection. As individuals who entertain, educate, and inform, radio influencers have the power to impact and affect behavior and brand consideration. And on a daily basis, they create environments that connect their audiences and businesses to help drive brand awareness and increase sales for those businesses, products, and services. In our 14th episode of this series, we hear the conversation I had with author, philanthropist, columnist, and host of Detroit's longest-running afternoon radio show, Mitch Albom, which can be heard weekdays from 4 to 6 p.m. on the legendary WJR. His show is a mixture of entertainment and information, a good dose of humor, some strong opinions, but welcoming to outside opinions and a variety of diverse voices. Well, Mitch, first of all, thank you so much for joining me on our podcast, Radio on Main Street. As someone that does it all, we are so grateful that radio continues to be part of what you do. And share with us a little bit about why radio is still so important to you.
Wow. Well, there's a number of reasons. I mean, first of all, I guess just a history. I started doing radio in college, never thinking I would go into it. I just did it for fun on a 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. Thursday night show where we played oldies music. But I, was a kid and was talking into a microphone to people. And I think there's something about that somewhat magical ability to relate and reach, I can't say a mass of people on my college station. I think we probably broadcast to about 12 individuals. But, it was still the idea of it was kind of magic. And then I remember we used to get even letters from people who listened to the show at 2:00 in the morning asking for requests. So I had an idea early on, like there's this powerful medium that you could just go and speak on and be talking to all these people. And then, I got into music and I got into journalism eventually. I never thought about radio, but I was a writer and I got asked to start making these small appearances on an FM rock and roll station to do sports. And having remembered my college experience, I thought, well, yeah, I know, you pull the mic down, you put the headphones on, you talk and try not to sound too phony. I think in college, I was doing a voice like this. I think eventually you just start to sound like yourself. But, I did it and I had a lot of fun doing it. And it just came naturally to me. I've always been a good storyteller. That's the one gift that I think God gave me an abundance of. I've always been able to tell stories. Even when I was a little kid, I was telling stories of my brother and sister and the kids in the neighborhood. And so speaking came naturally to me. And as I evolved with radio and eventually got to WJR, I started having a show of my own. It was just such an immediate medium. And because I work in so many other different mediums that aren't immediate, like writing, like you work at a book, from the concept to the actual sitting and writing to the printing to the time that someone actually gets it and reads it is years. And here is something where you can just pop on and just start talking and they're right there with you. And you say, what do you think? And they're on the line and they tell you what you think. And when you're done, you're actually done. You're not, you don't have to then edit and do redrafts or things like that. So there's so much to it that I really love. And just still adore about the immediacy of radio, and that you can say it here and it comes out there. And I don't think I'll ever lose that.
Well, with everything going on in your life, how do you actually prep for your show?
Well, so force of habit for me as a journalist, I've always read many, newspapers and websites and the like. I mean, long before there were websites, I would physically get 5 newspapers a day delivered to my house. And so I'm used to the idea of just being up on things. That's mandatory as a journalist. And then radio, you just have to be, when you do a kind of show that I do, you just have to be up on a lot of different things. So you have to read a lot of different sources. So that's kind of natural to me. I'd feel sort of naked on days. There's some days I force myself not to read things, like on weekends, just because I think it's healthy to have a break. But my natural inclination is, okay, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. Why haven't I already absorbed, 5 different newspapers, or, resources, or, watch some news programs. And then I have a really good staff. So if I have an idea and I say, I think this would be a good segment, I have people who can call for guests, and I don't have to sit on the phone and see if we can find somebody for 3 o'clock or 3:15 or whatever, producers. And I have really good sound people, and I'm an audio person. And so I hear things in my head all the time. I was a musician, and I say, I think this would be a great song if we go get, a backdrop to this, or put it to this and put some sound bites over it, or why doesn't our parody guy kind of do a song to this with these lyrics? Here's a couple of lyrics, and get started, and you guys run with it. And they're really good at just sort of taking that and shaping it into something. And then I've been with the same guys, some of them for 27 years now, in one show. So we know each other really well, and we just kind of gather, and we have a rhythm that may sound more prepared than it actually is, or sometimes doesn't sound prepared at all, which is exactly what people like. So I think you walk a line in radio between being too prepared and sounding very cookie cutter, in which case you just sound like a news broadcast, or having some spontaneity and listening to one another. I think listening is very important in radio, and you are the ears for the audience. So if you're interviewing somebody, you don't just rat-a-tat-tat fire the questions that you had written down in preparation. You have to listen to what they're saying. And if they say, well, then when I was 12, I went to Mars for a year, but then when I came back, I went to high school. You don't say, okay, now my next question is, you say, wait a minute, you went to Mars?
Right.
You have to stop, and you have to react to that. So some of it is just being open and not preparing too much. And I think there's, you walk a good line between the two.
You talk about, being prepared or not. How would you actually describe your show, and why do you think, and how do you sort of position it or think about it different from other people that are on the radio?
It's a good question. So our show has evolved a lot. I mean, when we started, WJR was a rather traditional conservative place, and I was asked to come in and do an afternoon show. We still had J.P. McCarthy in the mornings when I came over there, and he had been
a legend in your market.
A legend in Detroit. I mean, like a 30-year, legend, and doing things the same way, and the shows of guys who had been there for decades. And here I was, this new kid, I was in my 30s, and we were like the wild child of WJR, because, we played music and we had bands, and we were trying to create, my idea was that when people get out of work, they don't want to hear the same thing that they heard in the morning when they want information and news and stuff that they can use in the day. They want to go like to their favorite Cheers bar. And we were trying to sort of create that kind of atmosphere. In fact, we used to have like background noise that we kind of piped through the thing that made it sound like we're in a bar, and you hear like a beer being poured, and people screaming in the background, and it was sort of this party atmosphere. And we had like 6 people on, several women and guys, different backgrounds, different comedians, and it was a circus when we first started. And Nobody knew what to make of us on that channel. I mean, it was like, where'd this come from? But we
How
found an
great they let
audience.
you do it.
Yeah, that was maybe the most remarkable thing, was that somebody thought it was a good idea there. But they did, and we sort of found an audience, and then it evolved and it tightened up a little bit, and then in 2001, we were starting to be syndicated on ABC Radio at the time, owned us, and then in 2001, MSNBC came to us and wanted to simulcast our show, and we became an afternoon program on MSNBC, much like Imus in the Morning was on in the mornings. So he was on for 3 hours or so in the morning, and we were on for 2 hours in the afternoon. And so we were a TV show for a while and a radio show, which I found, I mean, it was fun, and we had a lot of guests from all over the world and all that, but it didn't fit very well. I didn't think it took away from the radio aspect. They wanted to know what we were going to talk about literally every minute, because that's how they got rated, and they said, yesterday at 2:17, you spoke about something, we had a little rating spike, whatever that was, speak about it again. And it's like, okay, that's not how radio works. So we ended up stopping right at 9/11. That was sort of the last broadcast we did, and it was several years before they even went back to anything like that. By that point, kind of the ship had sailed. But then we sort of settled back in more into the groove of what we do best, and we've kind of been doing that ever since, which is entertainment, information molded into one, a good dose of humor. Some strong opinion, but welcoming to outside opinion, and a variety of voices, male, female, black, white, that I'm a bit of a ringleader for, and a lot of arts, a lot of culture, and sort of hey, I don't know what they're going to do today, but I like those guys. I've been hanging around with them for years. I'll tune in and just see what they're going to be doing. And I think that's kind of where we are today.
With communication changed so much since you started on the radio and social media. Does that change how you think about communicating with your audience?
Well, yes, to a certain degree. I mean, you ask for texts now from people, and you read their texts over the air, whereas before everybody had to call in if they had an opinion. I still prefer the call-ins. I mean, to me, it's like, so now I'm reading your opinion on the air. It doesn't really bring you into the show. I like to hear people's voices, so we still like to take calls. But most certainly, we're aware of what we're up against, and and I don't even mean in a competitive point of view, but people are getting information on their phones like that. They're going to probably have it even faster than we do. So we're constantly, we have to keep our phones on and our computers on, because something will come across like, oh, did you see that something just broke out in some war somewhere, or this just happened, or
Right.
Something happened in sports, and everyone else knows it. So if you're not talking about it, if they're turning on the radio because at 3:31 they saw that somebody dropped a bomb somewhere, and if at 3:31 and 12 seconds you're not talking about it, you're already behind your audience. And so I think that speed demands that you sort of keep up with what everybody else's information is.
You that connection you have with your audience, and you talk about the phone call being a little more personal than the text. Can you share a story that specifically talks about that relationship that you have with your audience?
Well, man, there are a lot of stories. Many, many stories. I mean, we had a guy call once where there was a story about a Brinks truck or something like that had the doors had opened on the highway, and some people had grabbed the money and taken off with it. And we were talking about the story, and we got a call from one of the people who had picked up the money, and he said that he only trusted me, that he'd been listening to me for years, and he felt he didn't want to get arrested. He just wanted to give the money back, but he didn't trust anybody else, and he wanted to bring me the money. And that's what ended up happening. And we had the police. They gave me a bulletproof vest, I remember,
Oh
and
my
I had to go
gosh.
out to the lobby to meet this guy by myself, because that was the only way that he was going to do it. And the police were like they had to stay outside and whatever. And he came up and he was a nice guy. He felt, I think he said, I don't know, this money came out and I just grabbed it, put it in my car. I don't want it. I don't want
Just
to,
a regular guy.
just a regular guy. So he gave back all the money, it was all there. But I mean, the fact that he trusted me and, that's what we wanted to do. So that's one story. Every year at Thanksgiving, we have a huge Thanksgiving in our family. And so they start coming in at like Tuesday for the Thursday Thanksgiving. And I have all these nieces and nephews. And so I started many, many years ago to bring them down on Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And we would do a show. Part of the show, I would bring all my nieces and nephews in, and we would let them talk on the radio, talk about Thanksgiving, and they were all cute and voices were really high like that. And of course, year after year after year, they kept coming back. And so then we would start playing them from 2 years ago or 4 years ago or 15 years ago. I have one nephew who's been coming for 20 something years.
Oh my
And we
gosh.
have him when he spoke with a lisp and a little hype voice, like he talked like this, and now he's a father, and every time he still comes back, and people love that show. And and when they meet these people, they say, oh, you're the one on the radio that grew up, or you're the one who lived in Italy, or you're the one that had this.
So you shared your family with your audience.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I share my family, and the orphanage that I operate in Haiti has been a huge part of our show. I broadcast from Haiti a lot. We've managed to figure out how to do it. And so a lot of times our kids from Haiti will come on the show and talk. And then when they end up coming up here to go to college or things like that, people meet them. And we went to a football game once. I brought them in, and some guy had a suite. We were walking around. We were going to the cheap seats, and he said, "You're those kids from Haiti, right here on the radio. Come in here." And they got to go into a suite and eat like a buffet and everything like that. So that's what radio is. It's like you get a chance to talk to people. You never know who's listening, but then now and then you get a chance to meet them, and it shows how much they were listening because they really remember the details of a lot of little things.
Well, you mentioned the charity in Haiti. You have multiple charitable programs that you're involved with.
Yes, I do. Here in Detroit, well, I mean, I'm a big believer in that. I mean, I learned in writing the book Tuesdays with Maury, and from my old college professor, that giving is living was something that he taught me before he died. And I saw how he had lived his life that way, and how much it meant to him at the end of his life that the people he had given to and the things he had given to came back to him and made him feel like he had lived the right way. And I kind of changed my direction at age 37 of how I had been living my life up till that point, and began getting involved with charities and deeper and deeper and deeper. And now I have 9 different operations here in Detroit under the Say Detroit umbrella. And then we have 2 stores that we operate that are retail stores, dessert shops and popcorn and water ice and things like that, that all the money also goes to charity. So we run a business as well as these 9 separate operations, as well as the orphanage in Haiti, which I go to every month. So it wouldn't be me if that stuff wasn't integrated into the radio show. And in fact, the biggest highlight of our year is in December, we do an all-day radiothon from 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, 15 hours. And I invite every famous person I have ever met. Wow. And I've met a few, through the movies I've done with, and through sports and just travel and authors and all that. And we've had
all walks of life.
Yeah, we've had everybody from Hugh Jackman and Hoda Kotb and Dr. Phil and Anderson Cooper and Paul Stanley from Kiss, and I mean, endless, Kate Hudson and Billy Bob Thornton, and all these people come on just to help us raise money for Detroit. And the last year we raised 1.7 million in a day. So that thing has become a real, we're up to our 11th annual one already, and it's become a real red letter date on the calendar. So charity for me and radio go hand in hand. And I'm very fortunate to work for WJR because they give us that day every year, which is some valuable real estate. Everybody else takes off and and all the spots, have to move around and everything, but they're nice enough to do that, and it's made a huge difference in Detroit. We've raised well over $10 million already just on those days.
You talk about you had to move all the spots. Well, it's no secret that without the spots, we don't have the revenue to produce the show.
Yeah.
And we're very grateful to our sponsors for supporting us. But if you had 30 seconds to convince an advertiser that they should include radio in their marketing plans, what would you say to them?
I would say that while we live in a video world and a television world and a cell phone world, there's an intimacy to radio and a connection that people make with the radio host that's much different than what they see on TV. TV is a passive experience. You sit there and images just go flashing past you, and it's like, entertain me and keep me interested and keep me focused. I'm going to switch the channel. But radio is just the voice. And when you make a just a voice connection, you're speaking to somebody. It's like if you closed your eyes and just listen to somebody, wouldn't you have a more intense connection with them than if you were watching them in the middle of a circus? And that's a little bit what today's world is watching things in the middle of a circus, because there's so much going on. And so the intimacy of radio, I think, makes a connection that the other things don't. And when people are connected that way, they trust the host. And when the host says something's good, or they like it, or they believe in it, they're apt to try it themselves because they have that kind of relationship that I don't think they really have in some of the other mediums. And so, intimacy of radio is what makes it different than everything else, and viable. And our proof is in our results. We have people who advertise with us that only want me to talk about their charitable efforts as companies.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't want to sell a particular product. They know that I'm involved in a lot of charity and that I'm a trusted person, I guess, in that world. Mm-hmm. And they say, if Mitch Albom talks about what we're trying to do for charities, people will believe it, and they'll hear about something that we try to get across, that if we made a commercial for it, it wouldn't seem right. It would seem like we were patting ourselves on the back too much, or it was phony. And so
so they'll feel good about the culture of that organization.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's an interesting use of advertising time. So when they do that, do they give you specific data points to talk about, or are you just able to communicate from your heart about those products or services?
A little of both. Sometimes there's a few talking points and then I just sort of riff on them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I've already worked with them, so they've gotten involved with our charity, so I just talk about what they did. But what's fascinating is we had one, it was called Cooper Standard. They advertised with us, I want to say, at least 10 years. And I never once talked about a product that they made.
Wow.
I the whole time was just like, well, Cooper Standard likes to get its 2,000 employees involved in these kinds of projects. And last month they did this, or they helped with the building of a house, or they helped with cleaning out a neighborhood, or things like that. And we believe our employees should do this. No, I literally didn't know what they made. I mean, I don't know what their product was. I know they were in automotive, but I never really got into it because that was never my job. So. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, there's some specific things, but more often than not, they kind of trust me to sort of tell their story a little bit. And again, that's something that a host can do because the audience is listening. They're not watching. Try to imagine, like Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity talking for a minute about some organization without pictures,
Right.
to support it, without video to support it, you'd kind of like go, come on, man, move it along. Where's the photos? Where's the, because that's what you're used to when you watch. But when you listen and someone tells you a story about, these people came out at 8 o'clock in the morning, there were 200 of them. It was a Wednesday. They could have otherwise been working at their offices. They should have been working at their offices, but they came down in t-shirts and jeans, and they hammered and they sawed and they lifted and they cleaned out and they did trash bags, and it rained on them, and they were still laughing and they're having a good time. And at the end of the day, they said to us, man, that really felt good to just get involved and help and meet the people that we were helping and all. That's a story.
Yeah.
That's not a a video thing or whatever. That's a story. And people remember stories like that. And that's why I think radio works.
Well, with your amazing books and things that you've written, you are certainly a storyteller, and how great to be able to translate that in an audio way. It's
Yeah, I have even gotten to the point where I do the audio of my books now. I guess a lot of that has to do with my radio life, but the publishers, instead of going out and hiring, actors as they often do or professional voice people to read the books on tape, and the audio books, they asked me to do it, which also helps. I think when you read your own stories, I read my books out loud to my wife, like that's how she hears them. I don't think she's ever actually physically had to read one, because I've read them aloud to her, and I find that, I learn a lot more about my books by reading them out loud than I do by reading them with my eyes. So there's something to that too.
And am I correct that you have a new book coming out this fall?
Yes, it's sitting here in front of me in many pieces. It comes out in November 14th. It's called The Little Liar. Yeah.
And it's about the Holocaust.
It's a novel set during the Holocaust about a little boy who is never told a lie in his life and is tricked by the Nazis into telling the fellow Jews on the platform that the trains are safe where they're going. And of course they're not. They actually are taking the people to the concentration camps, and he doesn't realize that he's lying to them until it's too late, and his own family is put on them and sent away, and the consequences of the truth and the lies of the Holocaust and what it does to everybody involved. So it's a weighty subject, but it was a really interesting book to write, and I think has a lot of resonance today to truth and lies. When your government lies to you, when your security and police forces and armies lie to you, or people in charge of administering justice might be lying to you, then anything can happen. Right. Anything can happen. And you see what happened during those years in Germany and in Europe. And so it's really an examination of the value of the truth and the consequences of lies.
Pretty important topic.
Hope so.
I must ask, obviously this is a podcast, and for those people who are listening, they cannot see your background. You have a fascinating background, which is filled with books. It also looks like you have a bed and a massage table. It looks like someone could live in this room.
Yes, well, someone could, someone has, and sometimes people do. So the books are mine. This is my office. The bed is a futon that has been open because we have 10 Haitian kids who are living with us right now. Wow. From our orphanage, so everywhere we can. And the massage table is a fold-up thing that someone we know who does massage has been kind enough to come to the house and now and then and do massages. So
fantastic.
You have good eyes. You picked up on all of that.
Now tell me what you're reading right now.
What I'm reading, I've read about 47 books on the Holocaust, particularly the Greek books in the Greek Holocaust. I don't think anybody would know too many of them, but that's what I've been reading for the last year, so that I'm versed in it, because that's where my story takes place.
So before
I did read that book, Lessons in Chemistry, that everyone was yapping about.
Love it.
cute. Yeah.
It was a fun read. So before we close, our overall arching campaign is we talk about radio works. And if you could just finish the sentence, radio works because?
Radio works because in the end, people want connections with other people, and nothing really connects people the way that radio does. Mankind has been telling stories from one voice to another since the dawn of time, and radio is just the modern implementation of a very, very ancient human connection. And that's why it goes on despite all the technology that keeps changing and changing and changing. It doesn't get obliterated because you can't obliterate a basic human function.
And radio matters because?
Radio matters because of the same thing. You know, we are a collection of voices, and we are a collection of storytellers and people's opinions, and we need to have that variety of opinions. And because there's so many different stations and so many different ways for people to get their points across, it's not being dictated by a higher authority to say you have to say this and you have to say that. And if we eliminate that multitude of voices, we lose something very precious.
While we live in a video and a cell phone world, there is an intimacy to radio and a connection people make with radio hosts. Radio is just a voice. And when you make a voice connection, you're really speaking to someone. As Mitch shared, if you closed your eyes and just listened to someone, wouldn't you have a more intense connection than if you were watching them, let's say in the middle of a circus? Well, that's a little bit about what today's world is about with so much going on. The intimacy of radio makes a connection that other things just don't.
If you'd like to learn more about radio and its many benefits, we invite you to visit us at rab.com, or you can email us directly at askrab@rab.com. Until next time, it's Radio on Main Street.